As a resource manager is kind of middle of everything. It's the engine of Azure. So what you can do with Azure, it doesn't matter which one you use, PowerShell or Portal or whatever. Everything goes to Resource Manager in one point of view. It ensures that you have all authentications and everything privileges what you are trying to do. And if you have authorization to do something, then it allows you to, for example, create virtual machine, web application, storage account, etc. So Azure Resource Manager is in the middle of everything. It's important to understand because it's in many documents and in many technical aspects also what you are facing during your journey in Azure. Another important thing to understand in basics the hierarchy of Azure resources. Most of the time we talk about subscriptions as resource groups when we're talking about resources what we are creating in Azure. If we start from the subscriptions, they are building boundary and privilege boundary from Microsoft. When you have some subscription, it can be pay-as-you-go subscription that you can get with your credit card. It can be student subscription from your university, for example. You can buy those through the enterprise agreements, or you can buy those through some cloud solution providers that resells the Azure platform. And when you have subscription, you are allowed to use Azure services. You are allowed to create Azure services and also get benefit from what you're using. Also, when you have subscription, it's okay for you that Microsoft can bill you or partners can bill you for some amount of money what you are using. So basically, subscription is in the middle of everything in resource hierarchy. In Azure, we have also a thing called resource groups. And resource group is a logical group where you can put your resources. It's recommended that you share one resource group in for those resources that share also the life cycle. If we think about, for example, this picture, from the left, first resource group on the left, you have some virtual machine networking and some table there. They are perhaps some front end in your application that you are using. When the front end goes down and you don't want to use it anymore, you probably want to use backend SQL in another resource group and some middleware from Azure Functions or automation account in the third resource group. They have all different life cycles. When you ramp down the front end, you perhaps want to use the back end more still with some reporting or some other applications, and you might want to use some middleware also for automating stuff, integrations, and so on. So when you create resource group, it doesn't cost you anything. You have to have always resource group for your resources, at least one. One resource can be only in one resource group, not two, not three, only in one, and it must be in one resource group. So when you create resources, be sure to divide those by their own life cycle. Also, we have, on top of the subscriptions, when we go above management groups, those are more Azure architectural things, how you divide and manage your subscriptions in enterprise scale. When you have multiple subscriptions, you have multiple departments where you want to share your privileges and so on. So this is concept above the resource subscriptions. These four levels you must remember, and mostly you work with the bottom two levels. So management groups, subscriptions are on top, and where you work mostly are resource groups and resources. When we also this is good picture in that point of view. We talk in a little time about infrastructure as code and deployments in Azure. When we create something, some infrastructure as code, in subscription level, we can create resource groups, but we can create resources. When we want to create resources itself, we put them to the resource groups itself. And then it's the resource groups level deployment. So it's good to understand that it goes one by one also in Azure resource hierarchy. Well, what tools we can then use with Azure to manage it? I a little bit talked already about those in Azure Resource Manager slide, but Azure Portal, well, I think that you already know what it is, so you see it soon also on my demos. PowerShell you can use to interact with PowerShell modules straight to Azure, or with the command line interface that is cross-platform also. And it has been, of course, PowerShell is with now PowerShell Core. It's also cross-platform in Linux and OS X available, not only in Windows, but it's good to know. Then we have Azure mobile app that we can use, for example, get monitoring notifications and REST API where we can call everything, basically. If you don't have currently available PowerShell or command line interface, you have one in a browser always. It's called Azure Cloud Shell. You can use either PowerShell or command line interface as you wish. But all of those management tools are making the changes towards the Azure Resource Manager, which is handling every command that is going towards the Azure. But then let's dive a little bit more about what I've been working, let's say, last 5-6 years. Before that time, we mostly build our solutions in Azure by so-called ClickOps method. So you go to portal, you clicked everything and created resources and so on. It was cool. Nice to know and test and play, but then you face the problems when you have some application that have infrastructure, and you have to have the same infrastructure in dev, and you have to have the same infrastructure in test and in prod. Perhaps you have some little bit in other schools or something else, so you have bigger machines and bigger services in production than in dev, but still it's the same infrastructure. And then it came to the infrastructure as code. You don't anymore create those resources manually by clicking around the portal. You write everything with code. And then when you have code, you can parameterize it. So you have one file that modifies a little bit the deployment towards the dev, one that modifies towards the test, and one that modifies towards the production. So basically, you have to code only once and just change few values depending on the environment. In Azure, we have two basic native infrastructure as code languages. Those are Bicep, that is what I like to use much, and another is ARM templates, Azure Resource Manager templates. Those have been a longer time out, and everything based in Azure is in ARM templates. If you use something else like Terraform or Bicep or SDKs, whatever, it always is converted towards the ARM templates in Azure Resource Manager before the deployment goes to Azure, but you don't see it. It goes in the Azure Resource Manager. But let's check a little bit on one of demo about Bicep code here. So I have I can show you first there we have one of my resource groups in Azure. I refresh it. There's only one logic app that I will tell later why it's there and how it works, but we don't have any storage accounts here. Then let's jump to the VS Code back. I have here Bicep code, where I have a couple of parameters that I can modify. There I can make some standardization, for example, allowed values to my storage accounts like here, or allowed locations in regions where you can deploy things in code where the user can choose then who is using this bicep file. It's short file. After the parameters, I have here one resource. So here I specify a storage account that, hey, Azure, when you get this file, make a storage account that has a storage account name that comes from parameters. Put there some tags on it so I can recognize what's the application, who is the owner, location where in which region it will be deployed, which kind of it is, and then also is it which kind of school it is. There we have a couple of lists listed here. I won't go this now through. It needs much more time than this 1 hour, so I just skip it now for now. If you're interested in more about those, go to Microsoft Learn. There is Azure Administration course that you can do online. It's really good, and there are really good examples and labs also that you can use to learn more about these. Then I create to that storage account blob services and one blob called images. So I have the object storage available that has the share called images. Okay, I have file here. If I want to parameterize it already, I can do a bicep param file or then JSON-based file where I can put then my parameters. The point is here that I can have parameter file for the test, dev, and production or other environments. For example, if you're working with multiple customers, you can have parameter file per customer, for example. And then I only specify these files here, and I say that, hey, use this template with this parameter file. And now change the parameter file to this one, and it changes all the time the values that are in the file, then how it's deployed. But when I start the deployment itself, I now use PowerShell. You can use also Azure CLI if you want. For example, I put new Azure resource group deployment, resource group name. I give it the resource group name that I have already created, template file that is using. And as an example, I added here tags in object, where owner is a key and the value is my email. I send the comment. I have to also already been connected to that specific Azure and selected the subscription. It's same thing if I'm using PowerShell or CLI. I have to do it. It takes a little bit time that it creates the deployment and it completes. Always when you're doing these deployments by hand, deploying files or using some pipelines in GitHub Actions or Azure DevOps pipelines or with something else, you should also watch if there's coming some errors during the deployment. And when now it's ready, I can scroll a little bit up and I see here the provisioning state that it succeeded. It also created the storage account name because I have here default value as a demo and unique string that is coming from the resource group ID. Then I have deployment location that is Sweden Central because my resource group is location is in Sweden Central region. Tags, I added this one tag there, and the storage account Q is defaulted to standard LRS. If I now go back to this resource group, we can see here we have the specific storage account that I was created. And in containers, we have images container available for us to use. Basically, this was a simple example about the infrastructure as code. You can have really multiple file coding and everything what you want to do and how you complete your infrastructure. But if you are a developer and start creating infrastructure, go with the infrastructure as code immediately. First of all, you can test a little bit that how something works, but when you start creating some real stuff, do it with code. If you are more, if all your code is, for example, with TypeScript or Python or something else, if you have SDKs in that language, use it. It doesn't matter which one you use. Bicep has some own pros and cons as well. Terraform has pros and cons. It's totally up to you what to use. Those are easier languages for people who have been working more with infrastructure, not so much with the coding. But if you are using, for example, Python or some JavaScript languages, you can then use those SDKs or .NET even, as you wish, but do it with code. Then another thing, important thing in Azure is Azure Identities and Role Management. First of all, you have probably heard about Enter ID, and I heard that you have had last time some demos about conditional access. And that kind of thing. Enter ID is the user and group and device directory available in Microsoft Cloud. It has been it has been called Azure AD, Azure Active Directory. And when it was I said already that it's the worst named product ever seen from Microsoft, because it has nothing to do with Azure or Active Directory. Now it's much better with the Enter ID, because you can't mix it up with Azure or AD. Enter ID is not Azure. It's the one of the key things that you have to remember. Those are two different applications. Enter ID is for directory services, where you can put authentication, authorization, and logging, everything related to the identities and so on. And Azure is the platform for your cloud services in platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, and software as a service applications that you have. We have in Azure over 200 different kind of resource types that we can use, and only when it connects to the Enter ID is that when we give some permissions in Azure. And when we want to give some permissions in Azure, we link some user, some group, some device, some service principal, or something from Enter ID. So from the identity directory, we take the object ID from the Enter ID. Then we take something from Azure, for example, subscription resource group, something from there. We call it as a scope. So we have now the security principal, for example, the user. Then we have, for example, the resource group from Azure. And then we want to add in that combination also the role definition. So what permissions does the security principal, for example, the user, get to that resource group in scope? And then when we link these three things, we call it role assignment in Azure. And those roles can be, for example, that you get everything, every permissions in Azure, you get owner permissions. It's not really good because you want to use least privilege access and granular permissions, what the user has to do and where to have to do. In Azure hierarchy, it inherits always the permissions downwards. So it's like a tree. If you give the permissions to subscription, it goes downwards towards the resource groups and the resources itself. But what we often give for example, developers in development side is contributor permissions. You can do everything, almost everything, but you cannot add new permissions or you cannot use resource logs. Those are two typical things that you are not allowed to do with the contributor permissions. Then you have much granular permissions if you want. For example, you get virtual machine permissions or virtual machine contributor permissions or something else, what you want to do. Those are management plane permissions. We have in Azure, we have two kinds of permissions. We have management plane permissions and data plane permissions. If we think about the storage account that we saw, that I created, I can give permissions to myself to manage the storage account itself. You can imagine that it's something that you can manage the service or storage account itself outside, but you are not allowed to access the data inside it. So you can manage the service outside, but not the data. When I want to access the data, I have to get also the data permissions, data actions permissions. And there are different roles to data and management plane. So good remember. Let's check a little bit what the permissions works. So I have here the storage account, or I can give it to the top level, the resource group level. Let's select the access control IAM there, and let's add a new role assignment. Here are a lot of different kind of roles, almost 600 different roles. Now I want to give a permission that is called storage account contributor. Here, lets you manage storage accounts, including accessing storage account keys, which provide full access to storage account data. So I can have the access to the keys and to the data, but I don't have straight access to the data. And by the way, I can restrict also the keys usage if I want. Then when I have a role selected what I want to do, or give, then I want to select that to whom I wanted to give it. I now look for my own account there. I select it. Go next one. Then if there is available the privileged identity management, I can set something from here. I don't know. Leave time to like how this works. It's more like Entra ID stuff. And then there's summary that how it's working. Now I have added the role. I can see it from here, from this side. I look it from the storage account contributor. There you go. See, this is here the active permission that I just gave. If I go downwards towards the storage account itself, and go from here to see role assignments, I can see the storage account contributor as well here. So, but the level is resource group at inherited. So it's coming upwards to downwards. It's good to understand. Then when you're developing something and you want to give permissions, you don't want to in cloud create some service accounts and so on. You want to use managed identity. Managed identity is something that is tied to the resource. You don't have to manage the secret yourself. Azure handles it in behalf of you. You have two kinds of managed identities. There's system-aside managed identity that shares the life cycle of the resource. For example, if you create the logic app or something, automation account, Azure Functions or something serverless things, you can enable system-aside managed identity. It's enabled. It creates a security principle towards the Entra ID, and then you can give some permissions to it. When you delete the resource itself, where you have enabled the system-assigned managed identity, it gets deleted, the managed identity as well. And you don't have to take care about the secrets or rolling it over. It goes over and over in the background. Then we have managed identity for user-assigned method. It's separate resource that we can share between other resources. For example, if I have to create some, give permissions in my application for several different resources, and every now and then I'm putting it over and over, rolling it over, deploying new time the resource. Those permissions can't be there still all the time. It's just that I said that, hey, use this user as a managed identity. Then the resource can be used. Use that when it's accessing, for example, storage account. Let's check also demo from that side. So that's why I have here the Logic app. Logic app is something low-code and no-code platform or resource in Azure that you can use. But why it's here, there's the identities only, for example. We have system assigned identity or user assigned managed identity here. If I turn on the system managed identity, I get the object ID that it's there available. I could, for example, now go to the resource or the storage account itself. I add a new role as before, but now I give data plane permissions. So storage account blob, or let's just blob. So storage blob data reader. I want that low-code, no-code application Logic app reads some data from the images container that we just create, and then it reads the content and uploads it to some other service in another platform or in on-prem or wherever we want. So I give the reader permissions, most granular permissions for the data. And then I want to select here the managed identity, assigned access to managed identity. And I see that now here's the Logic app, and here is the Logic Mimmit Koodaa demo that I created for this purpose. And now, when I'm creating some integrations and automations in that Logic app, I can say that, hey, for accessing this storage account, use managed identity. Voila, it uses it and everything works. We don't have to take care of any shared secrets, anything. It's all in the platform. So prefer managed identity always if you can in all the application developments. Highly recommended. Then about the storage account a little bit. Storage is one of the biggest things in cloud, and the point is why it's biggest thing is that it's really cheap resource and it scales on your needs. We have in Azure almost everything. When we need storage, we create a storage account that contains a couple of different sub-resource types. One is object, the blob storage, that is object storage. We can there store some blobs, so binary blobs, often meant to images, videos, everything that you want to use. There can be whatever. It's really cheap to store there something. And there are different kind of tiers also. There are hot tier, cool and cold, and archive tier, depending on how long you want the data to be in storage account. It's cheaper to store it in archive than in hot, but it's then much expensive to read it from the archive than it's from the hot. So it differs a little bit. Then we have the table storage that is simplified NoSQL type of where we have entities. We don't have schema there where we want to write something. It's really simple. You can use it as you want, but there are also better solutions in Azure available if you want some more comprehensive NoSQL point, for example, Cosmos DB. Then we have queue storage. That is a simple queue where you can store messages. Also, there are much better solutions available in Azure if you want to go the production-based, but storage is for really simple applications. It's really good and usable and cheap. Then we have file shares, file storage available, where we can use SMB version 3 to access files across the internet. So it's TLS protected and it's really usable as well. If you have some virtual machines in cloud and you want to use files, you need to file share from a cloud. It's your way to do is the file storage from storage accounts, Azure files. Let's check a little bit about the blob storage more. So if you are developing some application and you want to store some static data, for example, in somewhere in cloud, you can have different containers. There's now in the picture, there are pictures and movies container that contains some blobs. We talk about blobs. Blob is something, the file itself that is there available. And then we can say that, hey, take the file from the container or blob and use it as you wish. How it works, pretty much, let's take all the demo back. We go to the container that we create the images. Let's upload some file to there. I have here available some image Koodaa skills for jobs.jpg. I uploaded it to there. If this would be available publicly, I can now use this URL to go to the file. But as you see, it's now not permitted. That is good, because often when some files are spilled out from your organization, they are stored in object storage, and those are open widely to the internet. So this is good that it's not, by default, it's not enabled the public facing connection. We can enable in storage account level or container level, or then what we can do is generate SAS token, that is shared access signature. And especially when we do some integrations and so on, we have to have some short time privileges to some file or something else. We can use it with this SAS tokens. We give the permission when the access starts, when it ends, and then we generate the SAS URL and copy the URL. It contains basically the same prefix that we had from the file. Then it has the SAS token there, where's the start time, end time, protocols, and so on, and also the signature for this whole URL. And when I now go to this URL, I can see the picture. So even the one single file is protected to use outside from the internet, I can use it with the SAS token, shared access signature token. Use it, and you can automate creation of those, for example, in 10 minutes, valid token, and then you do some integration, then it dies from the background. You don't have to take care of any more about the privileges that you left there. So use SAS tokens. It's not always the best use case and to use it, but it's really good way to interact with files. Then we have databases. I don't go deeply today with the database solutions. We have 3 different kind of database solutions, or let's say there's a bunch of solutions, but the 3 different kind of database tracks. There's relational database that are standard MS SQL, they are PostgreSQL, MySQL, and Oracle databases at Azure that you can use if your application needs of those. More common perhaps nowadays and new applications are the NoSQL databases, because those are schemaless and much more freedom to work with those, and those scale globally really well, and you can take the data near the end user, and the data replication to another side of the globe is really quick and as you wish, so fast. It can be asynchronized or synchronized replication then. In NoSQL, we have the Cosmos DB, that is our solution. If you would like to use some MongoDB in your application, it's also available NoSQL. Then we have in NoSQL, we have different kind of SQL. We have also availability to do some GraphQL style of data storage there. Then we have Apache Cassandra and MongoDB Atlas available also. If you want to do caching, we have Azure Cache for Redis. So Redis Cache is available in Azure and for your use cases. One thing that I have to mention always is, of course, the Azure virtual machines that are the most flexible Azure compute solution because you can do everything on top of the operating system. When you can do everything above the operating system, when you have power, you get also responsibility. So you have to then manage the operating system, update it. You can automate always those, but yeah, it's in your responsibility. You have to patch, you have to check if some other applications that you have installed have some vulnerabilities and patch them as well, and so on. So if your application needs virtual machine, you can use it. There are more than 700 different virtual machine sizes available in Azure, and different kind of, some are general usage, some are more computing power than others versus memory usage, and also some has more memory available than compute. So it depends a lot of the size of the virtual machine. Some of those has some GPU cards and some has not. It depends of your use case, which kind of workload you're using, which kind of virtual machine you should use. So there's no slider that I want this much of CPU and this much of memory. It's always those sizes that you have to decide. You can then later change it if you need. But it's crucial to remember that you manage everything. There's management overhead then. So I recommend in development and also when you are modernizing something, current applications, go with the PaaS solutions. Platform as a service solutions. One of the platform as a service solutions is App Service. App Service is like, how I say, is as a service or Apache as a service, some web service as your service. You can do create some application programming interfaces and publish it running on App Service. You can take your web pages and public web pages and put it to the App Service, and there are ready-made integrations in the App Service. For example, authentication. If you have some internal application you publish to the web application App Service, then you just have to turn on the authentication towards it, and then you tie it to some Entra ID group or something else, and your users must authenticate. You don't have to take care of the authentication in the application itself or the website. Just relay the authentication towards the App Service. So you can focus on managing your application there. You can deploy, of course, through the pipelines, everything if you want. But one cool thing in this is the slots. I want to show a little demo of those. So I have here another resource available. I have here the App Service Mimmit demo portal. It's just a standard App Service, nothing special web page currently deployed on it. But what I wanted to show to you are the deployment slots here. And there are now a couple of options how you want to do it. For example, one use case of this is that if you have new web page available, new version of it is coming up and running, you can deploy it to the preview or some other slots, so it's not going to production. When you have it in the another slot, you have different URL for it where you can use to test it, the new version, Mimmit demo portal /preview, and another is only without the preview, so it's different URL. You can test that how it works. When you're ready, that new version works as you wish, you can press swap, select which one you want to swap, and perform swap, start swap. It now takes the one that was in preview to the production, and it takes the production to the preview. In case of some problem that you find after you have published the new application version, you can go here and swap those again. So it's quick rollback to your deployment. Also, if you have available some new version of your, for example, web shop, and you have changed a little bit your user interface or something else, and you want to look little bit about how does it turn, for example, in your web some web shop or something else, are people buying more with the new user interface and so on. When this loads, and this I can show it more, but here we have in right hand side we have traffic. We can divide, for example, half of our users to the demo portal on the preview site and another to the production site. We can then check from the application insights that, hey, are the traffic going in which of those and where is coming more the like bytes when the visitors are buying more stuff on our website or doing some go-to actions in our websites. Now it's normal A/B testing now. 50-50 is going when we go to the production website. Half of those goes to preview and half goes to the demo portal. So it's easy to manage here if we want to do simple A/B testing. So easy, and there are different versions available. You can change them slots as you wish, and in that way you can reach at the end the new product version that is already tested. Application insights was one bullet. I come to that point in after a couple of slides. Then we have Azure Functions available. Those are serverless applications in cloud. What does it mean? Is that we can write our code straight to the cloud. We can code it with our IDE, for example, with VS Code, and publish it to the Azure Functions then. It supports C#, JavaScript, Python, Java, PowerShell, TypeScript, and Go, Rust, and others as well if you want to use the custom handler there. But those natively, and what it means is that I create the application in certain language as I want. I put it to the cloud, and then I have some trigger to run it. For example, I can have some web application there's a webhook that runs the application. Use cases in real life, for example, we have in endpoint device management some integrations that should be run after, for example, operating system deployment or application deployment in some infrastructure side. When it's run, it just calls the webhook that is in Azure Functions, and there starts the PowerShell script, for example, running, and at the end it does the magic behind the scenes. Another way is to connect it to other services, for example, some queues or topics in Service Bus or Event Hooks. If something happens in Azure or you get some message, then the Azure function gets that message. There are easy integrations, different kind of message services. It gets that data, it does some magic for it, and then it puts to the next place. So it's really, really good in middleware functioning solution, and it's really, really cheap to as well go with the consumption side where you only pay when it's running. So you don't have to pay it all the time. It's only when you use it, the function. Really, really powerful. Today, all of my automations almost that I create to the cloud that does not have any integrations to on-prem or something else. I mostly do it with Azure Functions. It's easy, simple, if I'm doing it with the code. If I'm not going with code, then I would use logic apps. It's really, really easy as well. Then secured application delivery. We have 2 slides more, and then we have takeaways and Q&A. So I think that we are ready in the 5 o'clock. When you're creating some application, is it a web application or something, APIs that you are developing, and you want to publish those to the world? There's always risk that you have used some package that is vulnerable or something else. The vulnerability is released a couple of weeks after you have published your application or something else. Then you have to patch your application, and that's normal thing. Nothing so special. But of course, your own application might also have some vulnerabilities that you haven't taken care of. It's also normal. We are human when we code, and at least AI hasn't yet replaced me. So I think that I have work still available tomorrow as well. So when we want to publish our web applications to somewhere, to public, it's recommended that you don't publish it straight, for example, from app services to the cloud, to internet. You use in front of it application gateway or front door. Those are application delivery controllers that publish it. You can add the web application firewall towards it that takes most of the attacks, and also for example, if somebody tries to do some SQL injection or cross-site scripting attacks towards your website or application, those doesn't even go through because the web application firewall detects it and stops immediately the traffic. So it protects your applications as well. Application gateway is a little bit older, and it's regional resource. If you have your application in West Europe or Sweden Central, you can have the application gateway there as well, and you publish it from there. But if the end user who is using your application comes to your application, for example, from US or Asia, they have to travel from the internet towards the application gateway that is in Sweden Central or West Europe, wherever you have been build it. If we use front door, it's a new solution that I recommend to use. It's a little bit more expensive, the application gateway in certain point of view, because its cost is based off the data that has flown through it also. So if there's much traffic, you pay more than less traffic. But front door does not have region. It's global. It's if the end user comes from US or APAC to your application that is here in Europe, they goes in from the Microsoft local endpoint in US or Asia, and then it travels in Microsoft network towards your application. So it's much quicker than in the public internet. You can have the application firewall as well there, and by the way, if you use front door, you have also the protection for denial of service attacks as well, because it comes from Microsoft side. Really recommended also in development and testing purposes and environments, because when you go to the production and you have this kind of secure gateway in front of your application, you know that it works there. Then last thing, a new thing is that I want to mention is Azure Monitor, that I recommend you to focus on a little bit, is because we have a bunch of data sources, applications, infrastructure, different resources in Azure that we can use, and they have logs and metrics. Some numeric values, for example, CPU usage or memory usage, and then we have some log files in diagnostic logs or something else that we want to store. We store it Azure Monitor solutions. There are log analytics workspaces and Azure Monitor metrics where we most of times store those data. Then we can consume the data that we have stored in the data platform with different kind of tools. For example, application insights, we get really deep insight from our application itself. If there's some thing that it takes time to load some phase of your application or specific site, you can get out the information from application inside. We can visualize all of our data in Power BI, Grafana, or some Azure workbooks, and it's much easier to understand then the data when you see the visualization. We can also make alerts and actions, automated actions on behalf of manual work. For example, if there comes some alert that there's no working our website for some reason, we can restart the application with automation and so on. So we have a lot of control there and automation available in Azure Monitor. Key takeaways from this 1 hour Azure Administrator. So 4 days course packed to the 1 hour, not quite enough, but some main points that I have been thought that it's good to know is that Entra ID is not Azure. Do not mix those two things. When you create resources Azure, use resource groups and use more than one. Share those, divide by the life cycle of the resource groups or the resources. Divide the resources in different resource groups based on the life cycle. Use front door or application gateway in front of your application in test also, at least on top of your production, of course. And when you create infrastructure, use code. That's because sooner or later you will find in that point that, whoa, I wish I had coded this from the beginning. But now I'm ready for questions. If you have anything, I can see that in the chat there is not any questions. But if you have any questions, I can stay here 5 to 10 minutes. Is Vibha here also? No, I don't think she has left already. But yeah, just ask in chat or open your mic and ask. So I don't think that we then have any questions. I hope that you found this short webinar very informative and get something out of it at least. This is short time, 1 hour to go so much through. But thank you, and hope you see someday in some community or something. And when you see, come to say hi and say that you were in this webinar. Thank you, and have a nice rest of the day.